Hello, friend. Thank you for joining me today for this practice. Today we will be starting in a comfortable seated position. If you have any props that you would like to use for Shavasana, go ahead and grab those. If you have any favorite go-to worship songs that you would like to play softly, a favorite candle that you like to light, comfortable clothing that you can move and breathe and relax in. Today we will be looking at verse in Psalms chapter 51, verse 12. In the NIV it says, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me." Finding yourself in that comfortable seated position, soften your gaze or close your eyes and just begin to find your breath. Slowly inhaling through your belly, your lungs, and your rib cage. And then exhaling it all out. Just doing this a few more times on your own. Finding that breath. Letting it go. I really want to focus on the first part of this verse that says, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation." And I think sometimes we get so distracted by the world, by responsibilities, by pressure, whether from other people or from ourselves, that we lose the joy of the salvation that God has given us. So in this practice today, I will be offering you a lot of my favorite shapes. You are welcome to move in the ones that you feel comfortable in. You are welcome to dismiss the ones you don't. If your body is asking for something completely different and you just wanted to have someone to do it with, go ahead and do and move in the way that your body is asking for today. But may our prayer be the same. That, Lord, may you restore to us the joy of your salvation. Let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to the places where that joy is found and the salvation that he offers us. May he be our comfort and our familiar place. As you are seated, just begin to move your body in a circle. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just begin to warm up your body, going one direction and then the other. It can be big circles, little circles. Adding in shoulder circles, neck circles, and stretches. Really just finding the movement in your own body today. Circling your wrists and your ankles, even those small little joints, they need some love as well. Returning back to a neutral seated position. Inhale your arms up overhead. And then exhale your left hand onto your right knee and your right hand either to your side or behind you as we do a spinal twist here. You can stay here as you continue to breathe, Or on your inhales, you'll lengthen your spine up, and on your exhale, begin to twist slightly more. Again, finding that space that works for you today and not pushing or pulling or pinching. Just restoring the joy into our bodies through this practice. Finding that breath. This isn't a competition with anyone else. You're not trying to look like me. You're not trying to look like a friend, a family member, someone online. You're not even trying to look like you did yesterday. You're just moving how your body needs it today. Release that spinal twist, maybe a small little body circle there. And then inhaling, arms up overhead. This time right hand on left knee, left hand behind you. We'll do the same thing here. And you may find that you have more space in these different shapes on one side versus the other. And that's perfectly fine and normal. Our bodies are balanced but not symmetrical. And we also carry things differently on different parts of our body. So just be aware of that. It's not a judging thing. It's just an awareness. Finding that breath. Finding that joy. Turning back to that neutral seated position. Go ahead and find yourself in a tabletop shape. So hands and knees. Removing any props you may have been using while you were seated. And then just begin our cat and cow. So for cow, we're going to drop our belly, extend our chest up, opening in the chest, lifting the chin. And then as you exhale, you're going to begin to make kind of a C shape with your spine, tucking that tummy in, not necessarily because we're trying to have abs of steel here, but to create that shape. And then rolling those shoulders in and tucking your chin. And just begin to roll this cat and cow with your own breath. Finding space, releasing the things that are not bringing you joy, that are distracting you from the joy that God has for you. Not saying that you're called to be happy 100% of the time. That's not realistic. But we are called to be joyful. And sometimes we lose that. So as we move through this cat and cow, asking the Father to restore to us the joy of His salvation. If you'd like to try tucking your feet, your toes under as you do this cat-cow, that can feel really good. I know the bottoms of my feet often get really tight, and this just, feels so good. Create some space and just kind of a spot that we forget about that affects our whole bodies. Returning back to a neutral table, just begin to circle your hips. So pretending you have kind of a hula hoop going on in your hips, just going one direction, and you can make this as big or as little as you would like, and then moving in the opposite direction. Again, just finding space. I think our bodies hold a lot of anxiety and tension and stress in our hips and in our lower back, and so just moving that around it feels so good. Tucking your toes and lifting your hips up and back. We'll go into our first downward dog, bending your knees as generously as you would like and pedaling those feet out. Making sure that you are lifting up through your hips and not your lower back. So if you're feeling a lot of pressure or strain in your lower back, make sure those hips are going up there. You can also try putting a slight bend in your elbows. We don't want to lock out in our joints. It's very easy for people to do, myself included. Even putting a little bend in our knees is helpful. If you would like extra support under your wrists, you may put a towel or roll up your mat. Just finding our breath here, pedaling. And then on an inhale, you're going to lift up your right leg into a three-legged dog, rotating that ankle there. I love finding space in my ankles and in my feet. It feels so good. And then you're going to open up in the hips into a scorpion. So bending that knee, reaching your foot towards your bum. If you don't touch it, that's okay. It's more the direction we're looking for. And then release that back down to our downward dog. Pedal it out. And we'll do this on the opposite side. So inhale, lifting up that left leg. Rotating that ankle, wiggling those toes. And then bending your knee, opening up your hips into our scorpion. This feels so good in my hips and in my lower back, so hopefully it feels good in yours as well. And if it doesn't, that's okay. If you're not feeling things in some of these shapes, doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Every body is different. Turn back to our downward dog. Roll forward into a plank, and then step your feet up to meet your hands at the top of the mat into a forward fold. And just like in our downward dog, you're going to want to make sure that your hips are what is pointing towards the sky and not your lower back. Feel free to bend those knees as generously as you would like. We're looking for softness here, for ease with our effort. You can try swaying your upper body back and forth. I often do this just to release tension in my upper back. A lot of us spend a lot of time hunched over computers or phones or steering wheels or children or whatever it is. I feel like our society is very hunched forward in this. Oh, it can just feel really good to let go of some of that tension. Placing your hands on your thighs, lift halfway up so that your upper body is parallel with the ground. Take a breath here. And then release that back down. Then we're very slowly, one vertebrae at a time, going to stand up, taking your time. And then reach all the way up over your head. Stretch through those toes, all the way through those fingers. Oh, opening wide, creating space. Find yourself in mountain. Toes are pointing forward. They are wide and planted. Knees are forward and slightly bent. Hips are forward. Shoulders are forward and away from your ears. Let those shoulders down. Chin is parallel to the mat. I love mountain because it's a sneaky little pose. It feels so nice sometimes just to remind yourself how to even just stand in alignment. It can feel really refreshing, restoring that joy, even in something as simple as standing straight in mountain. Stepping back with your right foot into a high lunge. And then pivoting that back foot as you turn into a warrior two. Making sure those hips are even. Bending in that front knee. Inhaling up and back into reverse warrior. So that front hand comes up. That back hand goes on your back leg. Inhaling back up to warrior two. And then bending your front arm. Kind of like you're blocking a karate chop. Bend forward into a side angle. So your your front forearm, will be touching your front thigh, not for support, but just for a boundary. We won't be here long. Then we're going to turn this side angle into a wide-legged forward fold. So pivot all 10 toes towards the long edge of your mat. You're already halfway there. You can stay here. placing your fingers on the ground, on blocks, on your shins, or bending at the hips, you can reach all the way to the floor. You can go side to side with this. Lots of things you can do with a wide-legged forward fold. You can stay still. Sometimes stillness is very refreshing, very restorative. We are a go, go, go society. And so finding times when we can find stillness can restore that joy, to take a moment, to take a breath. We're going to place our hands on our thighs, place ourselves back up into that warrior two. Pivot those feet into that high lunge and then back into mountain. Find a breath here. We're going to do this on the opposite side. You know where we're going. So deep breath, and then step back with your left foot into that high lunge. Pivot your back foot so that those toes are pointing to the long edge of your mat into warrior two. Check those hips. Make sure they're nice and balanced. Front palm is up and back as we go into reverse warrior. Finding your breath. Back up to warrior two. Then finding that karate chop block. I'm sure there is an official term for that, but into our side angle. And then swooping this down into our wide-legged forward fold. So all 10 toes are pointing forward. Slight bend in the knees if you want to widen your stance. That can provide some openness. It can feel really nice. And again, you can find stillness or movement here. Either way, find your breath. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. May our surrender lead us to refreshing, to restoration. Hands on your thighs, gently pressing yourself back up to standing, finding that warrior two, and pivot to the high lunge and back to mountain. Finding your breath here. We're going to swan dive down into a forward fold. Low lunging back with your right foot. Dropping that back knee, just begin to rock forward and back. We'll be preparing for lizard. Like I said earlier, I often feel a lot of tension in my hips when I feel stressed, and I think a lot of other people do as well. And I feel like lizard is such a wonderful shape to open up in that area. If you do happen to have just kind of a sensitive hip area, you can definitely use a block here to support your arms, and I'll get you set up for that. But that's just something to be aware of. You can also bring your back knee in closer, or if you're looking for more of a sensation, you can scoot that back knee back. Placing both of your hands on the inside of that front foot, we're going to slowly lower our hips. This would be the time, if you would like to use a block, place it under those forearms. If you don't want to use a block, that's totally fine, but you can lower down to your forearms if that is available to you today. Sometimes it is for me and sometimes it's not, and that's okay. Finding your breath here. If you want to find some movement and twist open towards that front knee, you could try that. Okay, we're going to bring that back foot to meet the front foot to find ourselves in a squat. And again, if you'd like to use a block to support your bum, that would be a great option here. Going back to the basics. finding a little balance here. And then you're going to release the opposite leg back into that low lunge, dropping that back knee. We're going to rock forward and back, again, just finding space before we go into lizard on this second side. Once you've done that a few times, setting yourself up. Now that we've done it once on one side, it may give you a good idea of the setup you want for the second side. And it may be different. That's completely fine. Placing both hands on the inside of that front foot, lowering your knees towards the mat. You can stay here. You can lower down to blocks or your forearms. You can turn this into a twist if you would like. Wonderful. This time we're going to release back to table. And then find yourself seated on the mat. Open your legs wide into a V shape. On an inhale, lengthen through the spine, and then exhale, forward fold, hinging at the hips, doing a seated wide-legged forward fold here. Finding that breath. Slowly bring yourself back up. And you're going to place your feet on the mat. If you would like to extend one leg long first to make this next shape set up a little easier for you, please feel free to do so. But placing your left leg long and your right foot on top of your left thigh, and then bringing that left foot back up. So you're doing a seated figure four here. You can stay here. You could try rocking side to side, or we're going to turn this into kind of the fire logs shape here. We're going to bring that left leg down, kind of like if you were sitting cross-legged, but your right foot will still be on top, so your legs are stacked on top of each other. Again, you can stay here. You can do a forward fold while you're seated in this. Restore to me the joy of your salvation. I didn't want this teaching to be overly complicated. Sometimes we just need to go back to the basics. And the basic truth, where everything comes from, is our salvation in Jesus. That's where our joy is found. That's where our restoration and our sustenance is found. You can slowly release your legs from this. Stick them both out in front of you, kind of shake them out. We'll do this on the opposite side. So placing your left foot on your right thigh, bringing that right foot up into our figure four. You're welcome to stay here. You can move side to side or just find a nice open stretch here. Or you can turn these into the fire logs again. This time your left foot will be on top of your right leg. If at any point this feels too much, please come out of it. You can find the forward fold here. There are times when I've got too many things going on at once, and I need to do one thing at a time, focus on one thing at a time. And how many times do we need to do that with our relationship with God, with our whole purpose? I need to be a good mom, I need to be a good wife, I need to be a good friend, employee, whatever, the list goes on. But our only job is to love God and to love people. So let's go back to that. So they come out of whatever version of the shape you are in and recline onto the mat. Have your Shavasana items nearby. We are getting close to that portion of class. Here, begin to find some final movements. I will give you some options, but please feel free to move in the way that your body is asking. You could try a waterfall with your hands and feet extended. Perhaps happy baby, knees to chest. Both are wonderful movements that can bring some openness in the side of your hips. And place your feet on the mat and try wiper knees. Just any final movements. Preparing you for Shavasana. You have your favorite mug with your favorite cup of tea. You can grab that. If you want a blanket or a sweater, please feel free to grab that as well. Getting yourself set up for a cozy Shavasana. That is my favorite way to do a Shavasana. It's not the only way, but it is my favorite way. I'm going to read a few verses over you and then just give you the next few minutes to talk to God, to listen to God, to just rest in His presence as He restores to you the joy of His salvation. But these are some of my favorite verses that I just go to when I need His courage, when I need His strength, when I need to be reminded of the truth, going back to the basics. First one I'll be looking at is found in Zephaniah. It's 3:14 through 20. I'll be reading out of the NIV. And it says this: Sing, daughter Zion, shout aloud, Israel, be glad and rejoice with all your heart, daughter Jerusalem. The Lord has taken away your punishment, He has turned back your enemy. The Lord, the King of Israel, is with you. Never again will you fear any harm. On that day they will say to Jerusalem, do not fear, Zion. Do not let your hands hang limp. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In His love He will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. The second verse I'm going to read to you is found in Psalm 37:4, and it's actually our family verse. And it says, take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. So as you delight in Him, have joy in Him, as He restores that joy in you, your heart will line up with His, and He will gladly give you those desires. I'm going to give you the next few minutes to finish out your Savasana here, and then I will close our practice for today. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Slowly begin to deepen your breath. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. And bring yourself back to this present moment. In this season of winter, there is this tension of longing and celebrating. We long for the holidays. We long for warmer weather. We long for peace and joy and restoration. And that will be completely made whole when we get to heaven. But at the same time, we still get to celebrate. We celebrate the birth of our Savior. We celebrate a new year. We celebrate slowing down and resting. And there is restoration of joy found in that. You may remain lying down or find a seated position as I close in prayer for this practice today. God, I thank you for my friend who has joined me today. I pray that you would restore to them the joy of your salvation. I thank you that in this season of longing and celebrating, that we would find the joy of who you are in the midst of that. That as we get glimpses of heaven in this weary world, that we would rejoice knowing what's to come. I pray for peace and love and joy over my friend today. In Jesus' name, amen.